everyone. Welcome to the Music Masterclass. This is Marc Sabatella from Mastering MuseScore. And this is my Thursday series where we talk about some aspect of making music, composing, arranging, improvising, playing by ear, etc. And so I actually have kind of a couple different themes in mind for today that I want to talk about. So give me one moment here while we play out the music and I get my chat visible. So a couple of different things that I want to actually talk about here. So first of all, yes, as part of the whole Braille study group, we're looking at Braille music, and I created a simple simple to me, reharmonization of a actually simple piano piece, right? That was from a beginning piano book. And I made a video of that and put that reharmonization up and asked for comments on that in the newsletter. Got a couple people commenting on it. And I want to go over that a little bit to just talk about some of the things that are going on in that harmonization. And so I'm going to do that. The other thing that I want to do today, that's sort of a special side thing, is, there's a number of reasons I could say, well, this person was instrumental in me becoming a musician. And there's fingers of one hand type of people who were instrumental in the fact that I am a musician today. And one of those fingers was my band director, my high school band director, Wayne Miller, who just died last week. We just got notification that he died, and he wasn't that old. So I don't really know the whole story or anything, but it definitely has me thinking back about the influence that music teachers can have. Because, I've had a couple piano teachers who were super influential for me, Cindy Kessler and Elizabeth Scheidel, who's now Elizabeth Austin. My band director, Wayne Miller, though, he was really instrumental, and that word is its own little pun, I guess, in how I got into jazz specifically, because really I didn't know jazz at all. And when I was in high school, the person that, they had what they call a stage band at the time, which is basically a jazz big band. I don't know where the term stage band comes from, but that's the term used in the education community sometimes. So the pianist who had been in the stage band graduated like my sophomore year, and they needed another pianist. And someone knew I was playing clarinet in the concert band and marching band at the time, and someone knew that I played piano also, and they kind of drafted me to participate in the stage band despite not knowing really anything about that music. I did know chord symbols and stuff because I was playing pop music also and playing from sheet music and working out my own parts, and so it wasn't a huge ask for me to step into this jazzier situation. But anyhow, Wayne Miller was the band director, and he was the one who encouraged me to join, and not a pianist himself, so he wasn't able to really give a whole lot of really specific direction as to what I should do, but was able to point me to some resources and show me some things along the way. And so that, if I hadn't been introduced to jazz in high school, I probably would not have continued on into music as any sort of career. So anyhow, he's really instrumental in that. And yet I first encountered him as the director of the concert band. So it was through his directing of concert band and marching band that I really got to experience his leadership first, and perhaps most strongly. So I want to take a few moments today to I don't have any I do somewhere have a cassette tape or something with some recordings of our actual band, but that's not really relevant or important. I want to take a look at a couple pieces that I remember from high school that kind of helped shape me. And we're going to go with this theme. I don't have sheet music for these things, which is great. I want to see, because what I originally said we wanted to do today was see what we can learn just by listening, right? And that's something we do every once in a while. Get our faces off the page, our fingers off the dots, and focus on listening and what we can learn that way. So, anyhow, all of that said, those are some things we want to do. So I am, though, going to start with our, where did he go? Come on. Didn't I load? I thought I loaded the other, apparently I didn't. I thought I loaded the Braille score. So let's do that now. And I'm going to play through this thing with my harmonization as best I can remember it. I never wrote it down, right? So this is Firefly with my harmonization, which I never wrote down. So can I remember what I played? I mean, I had trouble remember what I played Monday when I recorded it. But I want you to listen to this. And first of all, those of you who did listen to it from the newsletter and thought about it some, maybe you can tell me if I'm doing anything different. I deliberately didn't practice it. I deliberately want to test my own memory and talk through what's going on. All right. So I'm going to try to play what I think I played. Won't be note for note the same, but the same harmonization. So it goes like this. And then we had. And then I had. And then finally. And then. Nuts. And then. So that's my harmonization. And Colleen, no, I haven't yet seen the Firefly family. Was that something you just posted in the last hour or so? Because I've been otherwise engaged with setting this up and also doing some more accessibility work. But I will check that out. I will definitely check that out. So let's talk about this first, and then maybe we'll take a quick look at that. So what's going on here? The original version is just this, and it really strongly implies 1, 5, 1, 5, and then 1, 5, 1, 5, 1, 5, right? It's just back and forth between 1 and 5 as far as the implied harmonies, the harmonies that are most strongly implied by the melody. And Dave, you mentioned a song Little Bird, and I'll bet there's a million similar songs. The one that it reminds me of is one called Lightly Row. Lightly row, da da da. I don't even know what if there's lyrics, but da 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 da. That's Lightly Row is, I think, from the Suzuki piano books, maybe, or violin books, or maybe something. It's like something I have a memory of from some like other series of basic, really beginning instructional books. So I don't know that it's a song that has any life outside the world of instructional things. So the original was just 1 and 5, 1 and 5, 1 and 5. And so like 1, 5, and then back to 1. So these are two measure phrases, 1 leading back to 1. And then the next measure is shorter phrases. It's back and forth quicker, right? It's just a whole lot of back and forth between 1 and 5. So what I'm trying to do in my reharmonization is create more interesting journeys. And so in my harmony course, and so yeah, I do have a course called Harmony and Chord Progressions, and it's available. I haven't turned it off or anything, but what's going to happen starting around a month from now, we're going to run it as a cohort like we did with basic music theory, meaning I will do a separate version of that where we post lessons week by week, work on the lessons together, work on projects together to go along with those lessons, and take a look at everyone's coursework during these music master classes. So there will be the whole cohort version of harmony and chord progressions starting in the fall. I don't have a specific date, lots of details for me to work out yet, but that will be coming up. Little bird, I have heard what a merry song you sing. Yeah, okay, that makes sense, but very similar. So I have a number of different ways of phrasing in my course where I talk about these different kinds of chord progressions. And there's a term that I use that's called a static chord progression that basically starts with one and leads back to one. And so what this is a whole series of these little static progressions. Each individual phrase starts with one chord, right? And then the next phrase, and then the next phrase, and then back to one, right? Each 2-bar phrase, if we want to break it down into 2-bar phrases, they keep starting with a one chord. So it keeps coming back home really often and doesn't really go anywhere interesting along the way. So my harmonization is based on the fact that composers over the centuries have found all sorts of more interesting ways of starting on one, leaving, and coming back, following all sorts of well-traveled pathways that we know will let us start from one, go on an interesting trip, and come back. And so a lot of the things that I am doing are like absolutely totally in line with that. So let's listen to this, and I'm going to play it one more time. I'll play the first phrase, and I want people to tell me what I'm playing for that first phrase. No, I'm playing it again. So what's going on there? I will suggest that everything I just played there, even though I played them with kind of jazzy voicings, there is nothing in there that Mozart didn't know. There's nothing in there that Mozart didn't play. There's maybe you have to start about there, because I would say there was one chord there that before Mozart's day were not very common. So first phrase, Colleen, absolutely. 1, 6, 2, 5. So Allison, what you call discordant, jazz musicians call beautiful. So it's all relative, but if you want to hear it with simpler triads, the same harmonization. But this chord, there is no getting around. This chord has 2 dissonances in it. Well, 3 dissonances. It's got this minor 7th here, tritone here, and tritone there. This chord has a name. It's been around since Mozart's day, and it sounds a little out of place to have that be the only colorful chord in the song, which is why when I play it, I'm more likely to add other colorful things so that that chord doesn't stand out so much. But now I'm putting 7ths on the chords and no other colors. That time, instead of triads, I had 7ths. My version had major 7ths, which add a little bit of dissonance. And then this flat 9, big favorite of Bach. Bach loved dominant 7th chords with flat 9s. Loved them. And then just a plain minor 7th chord here, and dominant 7th chord there that I put a flat 9 on again. Again, hearkening all the way back to Bach. So nothing particularly unusual about those sounds. This is the interesting one that I'm loving. I'm wondering what term we would come up with. And yeah, crunchy is a term I often use for these dissonances that create sort of expected tension that we resolve in sort of expected ways. Like when you see a movie, a detective movie, somewhere someone's going to commit a crime, so there's some tension there, and then the detective's going to solve the crime, and there's your release, right? If there was no crime being committed and no problem to solve, no tension, you don't have a movie, right? So this idea of creating tension, but creating tension that's expected within the genre is it's what music's about. And I use the term crunchy when we push the limits of that dissonance. So, Colleen, you said a flat 6, and you're talking about this chord, and this is absolutely what that is. It is an A flat 7th chord with a sharp 11 on it. So it's a dominant 7th flat 6 chord. And but let's come back first, though, to that first phrase, because you had that right. It is absolutely 1 dominant 6, 2 5. And the reason it's dominant 6 here, well, tell me, why is it dominant 6? I'll tell you. Because normally, right, in the key of C, we would expect a minor 6 chord, but it's really common to have that dominant 6th chord. Why? And you'll get the answer in the chat perhaps also, but I'm going to say it. It's because it's a secondary dominant. It's A7 leading to D minor. It's this 5 going to 1 in D minor, right? So, and then our 5, and then coming back here, I use a plain diatonic minor 6 chord simply because the C natural. I didn't want to go that crunchy on us, right? That's too crunchy for the style. In jazz, that's a perfectly fine chord. It's a bluesy sound with a major and minor third together, but I didn't want to push that level of crunch on this. So now this chord, though, the one that you're correctly identifying as the root being scale degree flat 6, so Roman numeral wise, this is a flat capital 6 dominant chord, but it has a very specific genesis as far as where it comes from in the classical tradition, which I said starts somewhere between Bach and Mozart. I'm just drawing, I don't know Haydn, how often he used it, but certainly Beethoven used it a ton, right? So somewhere in that transition between, say, 1700 and 1800, that chord went from being almost unheard of to being really ubiquitous. Somewhere in that century is when it translated. So where does that chord come from? What is it called? The classical derivation. Let me play it for you a slightly different way. This chord here, if I play this chord now is a simpler chord. This is a D half diminished chord. D, F, A flat, C. This is a D half diminished 7th chord. So this would be the half diminished 2 chord. In other words, it's borrowed from the minor key. This chord would be in the key of C minor. That would be the 2 chord. So what's actually happening here is something that starts off feeling like this borrowed chord from minor, and then one of those notes takes a little trip. This has a name. That is a Beethovenism if there ever was one, and it is called an augmented 6th chord when that happens. This chord is called an augmented 6th chord because this interval, A flat to F sharp, is an augmented 6th. Now, yes, it's also, if I call this G flat, then it's also a minor 7th. But the classical spelling of it would be honoring this line. F sharp G. So the classical derivation of it would be honoring that upward resolution from F up to F sharp up to G, and therefore it's spelled with an F sharp and called an augmented 6th chord. Having that D within the chord makes it what's called the French augmented 6th chord, as opposed to what's called the Italian or the German or the Swiss augmented 6th chords. They're all variations depending on what other notes are present. But they all have this as their foundation, the A flat, the F sharp, and a C, because it's basically an F minor chord with the F sharp. And then, yeah, maybe there's a D also, or maybe there's an E flat, or maybe it's just these 3 notes. So these are the different flavors of augmented 6th chords, but they're all based on this, which is essentially an A flat 7th chord, but respelt, right? So yes, whoever just said sounds like French 6, I always can't see the, oh, Elizabeth, absolutely, perfect. Yes, that is a French 6th. So there you go. So French 6, so in that in my harmony course, I go into a lot more detail about this chord, where it comes from, how it's useful. But jazz musicians may also know this chord as being, this part of it is a D7 chord. And that could have played that. D7 to G. It's like D7, but with an A flat placed in the bass. Jazz musicians call this a tritone substitution, because D7 to G would be another secondary dominant. It would be a really common thing. The 5 in the key of G going to G. But substituting that D chord with an A flat chord, the chord a tritone away, is called a tritone substitution. So these are two different roads that get you to that same chord. So this is stuff I go into a great deal on in the harmony course. So anyhow, remember that chord though. Then I had... We could talk about that more, but I'm not right now. Keep, feel free to go revisit that in the community. But then I had, here is again that half diminished 2 chord. This is again D minor 7 flat 5. And D minor 7 flat 5 is basically F minor with an added 6th also, which is, Colleen, exactly what you're saying there, right? So the half diminished 2 chord and the minor 4 chord are very much related to each other, just like in major keys, the 2 as a minor 7th is very related to 4. We call both 2 and 4 subdominant chords, and that also applies in minor keys. Half diminished 2 and minor 4 are both subdominant chords in minor keys. So what's happening is here I have the 1 chord, and then I have this half diminished 2 chord, which is this subdominant chord borrowed from C minor. I want you to remember that chord also. Then I had, here I am using the D7 going to the G. Anyhow, every other chord that I used here is one of those things. They're all secondary dominants. There's a little use of that minor, that subdominant minor sound, that minor 4 or half diminished 2 sound. And then there's that augmented 6th chord. There's also, a diminished chord in this little phrase right here. This is an F sharp diminished chord going to G. So it's the 7 chord in the key of G resolving to 1, right? So it's called a secondary diminished chord. These are all core techniques that I talk about in the harmony course. And so, if all of this stuff you're going, oh yeah, I know exactly what that is, I know exactly what that is, then great. If you're like, oh, I'm not sure what this stuff is, it sounds interesting, I sort of understand some of the words you're saying, but I don't get how they all fit together, that's what we're going to explore in the course. All right, what I want to do though is now flip, let's go ahead and take a look, Colleen, since you mentioned it. I am going to take a look at your Firefly thing, just to stick with that piece another moment here. And so you have, you've got your own harmonization. Oh, so cool. So cool. Let's take a look at this. I got to see this. So I'm going to play this because why not? So should I play? I'll let MuseScore play it, and then I'll play from chord symbols. Nice. All right, nice. So you've changed the melody around so that you're taking that initial melody and doing some other things with it. But yeah, actually, I'm trying to see if that bar 5 has that in it. It sort of does, but sort of doesn't. So yeah, you're based on the original, but got some own things, and you're making much more use of that diminished chord instead of a dominant A7 going to D minor. You're using C sharp diminished going to D minor, which is variation of the same thing. Again, it's that 7-1 instead of 5-1. So really nice. There's some places here where there's some dissonances that are like, whoops. That's a nice chord there. So this chord here, which you're calling C sharp diminished, is actually, if you look at what's happening here, it does have that, but as long as it has that F in it, it also feels like G half diminished, which is probably also significant. And then this one, B minor 7, right, has notes in it that aren't necessarily going with the original melody, but it's nice voice leading. I like the sounds of it. So yeah, cool stuff here. Really cool stuff here. And then that triplet, I like those walking thirds triplets thing. That's really cool. Again, not part of the original, but a nice thing going on. So yeah, some nice stuff in there. And yeah, you also have your minor 4 chord happening here, a couple places, like right there. And then you're actually taking that minor 4 chord and then moving that C to B, which now gives us basically a B diminished chord, which is the 7 chord in the key of C. So you're taking that minor 4 chord and then kind of making it into a G7 or B diminished to resolve to C. So that's another nice technique. Instead of going directly from minor 4 to 1, go from minor 4 to 5 to 1, because really that's the only note that needs to move to make that happen. So yeah, nice stuff in here. All right, so yes, and thanks for the minor 4. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to flip over to a piece that was one of the pieces that I remember most strongly from high school. And we're going to listen to it. And I'm going to stop because it's kind of a long piece. It's like long-ish. It's like 6 minutes long. But rather than just listen to the whole thing, we're going to take little bits and pieces of it and talk about them. And so this is a piece that is probably familiar to many people who went through like school band programs. And what it is, it's a transcription of Wagner's Elsa's Procession of the Cathedral. Well, that's not like the name of a piece, but it's a scene from Lohengrin, right? And so it's a scene from an opera that is when the character Elsa is proceeding to the cathedral. And the music from that is very, processional and, really, really a gorgeous piece. And there's several different concert band arrangements of it that have been made over the years that it's sort of a staple of the concert band repertoire. There's a lot of pieces that, if you play in marching band, there's certain pieces everyone plays. If you play in a jazz band, there's certain pieces everyone plays. If you play in a concert band, this is one of those pieces. Now, the version that we're going to listen to, I cannot guarantee is the same version that we played. Because there's lots of different arrangements of it. Because it was originally, an opera score. So it was originally for, basically an orchestra and a Wagner orchestra at that. But the various different band arrangements that exist of it, this guy here, Lucien, I wish I could pronounce French, Lucien Carrier? I have no idea how to pronounce that name. I wish I did. Cailliet. So this is apparently possibly the arrangement that we played, possibly, because it is one that's been around a long time and is very popular. There's other simpler arrangements, simplified arrangements. There's other more modern arrangements that, are still faithful to the original, but I know I didn't play in 1982. So because they weren't written and the arrangements weren't made until the 90s or later. So there's a good likelihood that this is what I actually played. And I played first clarinet, and there was only one semester, I think, because there's this whole challenge system, right? And my good friend Debbie Wiley now, she was the better clarinet player. Did you hear that, Debbie? I don't know. I'll pass that along. She was a better clarinet player than me in a lot of respects. But in any case, I managed to get to a point where I did get to play this piece and get to play that solo somewhere or other. So let's just listen to this piece, and because there is like a little clarinet solo thing line within it. But to me, it's actually more about the horns. But yeah, let's listen. All right, I'm gonna stop there. I said I'm gonna stop periodically, so we can establish a few things. The key. I don't know what the key is. I don't remember the key from back then, and I don't have perfect pitch. And Elizabeth, I know you do, and maybe some other people do, or maybe those of you who have played the piece remember. But I'm gonna find out what my key is. Ba-dum-bum, there's my tonic. Now I'm gonna try to do this in my voice, because I just don't have perfect pitch, and I try to force myself. There's a part of me that wants to call that C, but what I'm going to do is go sing. Okay, that's clearly not a C. It's a note that I can just sort of barely sing at the bottom of my voice, so it's somewhere around an F or an E. I'm thinking about the sound of a guitar and thinking about boom, boom, boom. I think this is an E, and that note was an F. F. That was an E flat. All right, there you go. So I was a little off. So my voice could place it somewhere around there, no better than that. So we're in the key of E flat. And I'm going to just listen to it again and just pay attention to the fact that it's really 1 chords, 4 chords, and 5 chords. There's our 5 chord. And listen to the pedal. I would call it pedal point, except it's not really. So pedal point normally implies 1 note in the bass that's sustained. Sometimes other terms are used if it's a 1 note somewhere else. But here it was a bassoon or an English horn. It's this note here being sustained through that in one of the double reeds. Hear it? Still sustaining. Then it goes to the D flat. So here, there was also motion to the 4. I think I heard a secondary dominant. Did you hear a D flat? Did you hear? Did you hear that line in there? Listen to that. Maybe not. I imagined that I heard that D flat in there. Yeah, I think there's not a D flat. I think my brain filled one in for me, and I think it was just a triad, and it was just the way Wagner wrote the crescendo there and the way it was transcribed into concert band that allowed me to feel that 1 chord moving to 4 as if there was a dominant 7th in there. So Elizabeth, if you hear it, I'm absolutely going to believe you. But for some reason, I can't place where it is. I got the headphones on. Yeah, it's in there. Okay. And then minor chord. Right, it's going to 6. to 5 again. That melody defines defines so much. What's that melody? Think about it. What scale degree is that? Let's talk scale degrees. We could talk keys, but let's talk scale degrees, because notes are just notes, but numbers tell us something meaningful. It's 1, 7, 6, bottom, 1, 7, 6, flat 6 to 5. So, by the way, Elizabeth, can you tell me what instrument was doing that? That would help me hear it, because yeah, I pick up the gist of hearing that dominant 7th chord without picking out the note itself. And I would have to loop it more and really, slow down the whole proceedings here up to the cathedral. But that line, that flat 6 resolving to 5, not chords, but the melody note, flat 6 to 5. This is all about that minor 4 chord that we were just talking about. Minor 4 to 1 is all about scale degree flat 6. So whether it's played as an actual minor 4 chord or as a half diminished 2 chord or some other harmonization built around that note, that scale degree flat 6 borrowed, because E flat major doesn't have a flat 6. E flat major has a B flat and a C. It doesn't have a C flat, right? That's the Billy Don't Be a Hero chord. That's all, right? It's when I talked about that a couple of weeks ago, that minor 4 sound, it's that sound. So let's pay attention to that, because it's used throughout, because that melody, this is the melody. Okay, so yeah, that is a gorgeous line, and I'm just going to play it again and talk a little bit about what's happening. So that melody, right? The melody, then the melody is a descending scale, but the background lines have this ascending line set against it in just the most gorgeous possible way. You hear that in the woodwinds? Chromatically going up. That line going up is ascending. It's ascending mostly chromatically, and the timing of when each note goes up is chosen really carefully to fit the harmony that is being, that Wagner is creating here. So he's got this descending melody that's mostly diatonic, except for that flat 6. But then the ascending line set against it has got all that chromaticism, because basically there's a bunch of secondary dominants and other stuff going on, and that's where that chromaticism happens. Sometimes that chromaticism happens just to be melodic. It's like that F sharp. Let's talk about that for a second. I'm going to back up a little bit. That F sharp isn't harmonically significant. It's really just an E flat chord. and we pass through the F sharp on our way to the G. It's just a passing tone. Now, is there a G being sounded underneath that F sharp or not? Because if so, we would have that blues thing going on. Did Wagner give us the blues? I don't think so. I think Wagner knew to keep the G out of the picture at that moment, so we don't hear the G and the F sharp together, but I don't know. Yeah, I feel like it just sounded like a minor chord for a second. He doesn't try to give you the G against the F sharp. That is a great lesson. If you want blues, give me this. If you want blues, give me this sound. If you don't want blues but want that passing tone, then you've got to not have the third against that passing tone. Don't be giving me this G in one voice while another voice is passing through the F sharp, because you're going to have this dissonance between the two. Not that dissonances are always bad. And, you know, we've talked about dissonance and we talked about all the dissonances in these chords here, but there's some dissonances that fit the genre and others that don't. And so, like when I talked about the detective movie and you expect there's going to be a murder somewhere and the detective's going to solve the thing, yeah, you expect that there. But if this was a romantic comedy, maybe you don't expect that. Or maybe you do, because there's a lot of cross-genre pollination. But, you know, in Star Trek, you know, someone's going to beam to a planet and something's going to happen after that. You don't expect someone beaming down to the planet if it's not a Star Trek movie, because it's out of place there, right? So, certain kinds of tension are idiomatic in certain types of music and not in others. So anyhow, that's the lesson there. But anyhow, so we've got that ascending line and we've got the descending melody, and then let's just listen to that one more time and move on. Here's the melody. I want to call attention next, before we do move on, to the point at which I put my hand out here. There was a really prominent chord used, and it's when the low instruments came in, low brass, I think. And check that out. Right there. Oh. It's a C, right? So he's gone from, so it's a C chord resolving. So we have an A flat going to F minor, right? So it's the 4 chord going to dominant 6 going to 2. There's that dominant 6 going to 2, like I used at the beginning of my Firefly piece, right? So it's dominant 2 going to 6. I mean, dominant 6 going to 2. More than that, though, listen to the other voice. It has the A flat in it, right? That chord is not just a C7 chord. It's a C7 augmented chord. It's got an A flat in it. And this is very much related in ways that, again, I can talk about more in the harmony course, but elsewhere in one of these other sessions, I mentioned something about Someday My Prince Will Come. And if this had been in the key of A flat, someday my prince will come, right? That progression, that use of in the key of A flat, which temporarily maybe we are for just a brief moment. I could see this as dominant 3 with that augmented 5th in it, which is really a flatted 6th. anyhow, that chord has this special relationship that, again, in the harmony chords we get more into. But the point I really want to make about it is that is a great chord harmonically because of all that color. But Wagner accentuates that by finally bringing in bass instruments. We haven't really heard bass instruments so much. It's all been middle register stuff. This is middle register stuff. Now, that's the entrance of bass instruments. Now we'll go on. Five. Oh, what key are we in now? Now we're in B flat. So he's modulated through that passage to get to the key of the 5, the key of B flat, which is super common. This is all very diatonic, straightforward. That chord again. Ah. Again, we have that major chord going up a step. That is that someday my prince will come thing again. So in the key of B flat, 1 to dominant but augmented 3 chord to 4. And that is exactly what's happening here. It's someday my prince will come. Not there. Right there. That this chromatic descending line, he's using that chromatic descent often, as well as chromatic ascents. Modulation again, back to E flat. To C minor. 4 to 1. 5 inverted. So he's again using that minor 4 sound, but this time it's to set up a modulation. So listen to that. You're going to hear something that sounds like this minor 4 chord, but it's not going to come back to 1. Oh, that's a different minor chord. What key are we in now? I'm like hunting around here. We're in E. We went from E flat to E. You might say they're right next door to each other, but no, on the circle of fifths, those are a million miles away. To get from the key of E flat to the key of E requires some major sleight of hand. And by the way, Dave, if that's the video I think it is, it's actually a different arrangement. This is, yeah, so this is a different arrangement here. My tropa is Franco Cesarini. So it's a different arrangement of the piece than the one we're listening to. And this one, I believe, was composed after I was in high school. So it's unlikely that this is the arrangement that I was actually playing in school. So somehow over the course of those few bars, he went from the key of E flat to the key of E. Key of E flat. nothing but a 6 chord, and then 4 to 1 to 5, the third in the bass. Now 1 again, minor, and now more minorness, and we're in E, right? So by progressively darkening the sound, he went to an E flat minor sound, and then, you know, moved to a different place, and then made it minor, more minor still. There's that minor. And then more minor still. So yeah, by moving these chords, downward, taking a major chord, moving it down a half step, making it minor, and making something minor out of it, it's darkening the sound while still feeling related. And yet, by creating all that darkness, every time you go from major to minor, you're adding 3 flats to the key signature, right? So over the course of just a couple subtle shifts, he goes from 3 flats to 4 sharps, which is 5 clicks on the circle of fifths flatter. Anytime you go up a half step in pitch, you're going 5 clicks flatter. Think about C to D flat, no flats to 5 flats. You're adding 5 flats to the key signature, and that's what he just does in the course of 2 measures. Right there, moving to another place, and then now we're in E. That melody, again, he's using this chromatic line, and this is just an appoggiatura. It's not harmonically significant, but he's nailing it. He's putting it right on the beat, and then resolving, right? I love that chord. Oh, that cadence, that false cadence. You think it's done. It's like a vamp. He's like, I've reached this cadence. I've reached this thing, and then nope, I'm gonna just cycle it around. I've reached my 1 chord. In jazz, we call this a tag. You've reached the final chord, and you're like, no, we're not done with the song yet. We're gonna do those last couple bars again. And he gives us a tag here, and that tag involves syncopation, another jazzism, which is kind of funny. So let me back up just a little bit. 1 and, right? So it's all those syncopations. And then again, 1 and. Again. But this one, wait a minute, where are we now? So he used that same exact, that same chromatic ascending line, syncopated, but manages to get off the elevator this time at a different floor. He instead of walking that chromatic line all the way up like he did the first few times, get back up. He steps all the way up to the B. time he stops on the B flat. And that's how he gets back. So the first time he moved from E flat to E, he does it by darkening the sound, flattening some things, adding flats to the key signature. This time he does it through an ascending chromatic line that he just stops a little early. He just stops. He stops at the different floor. Then it was supposed to go up all the way to the 5th floor, and he got off at the flatted 5th floor. And now we're in B flat, or possibly E flat. Yeah, we're in E flat. Yeah, we didn't have a harp. The brass are kind of starting to assert themselves more. Now the horns. Horns get the melody now. Yeah, that is some procession. That is some procession. Yeah, so that the way bringing in that brass there with that same melody, but having the horns, having that whole triumphant thing, and then the more fanfare-oriented version of that same melody, which eliminates the chromaticism and brings it back to the world of fanfares, 1s and 4s and 5s. I mean, it's a brilliant piece of music, brilliantly orchestrated in the original, which I've only heard like once in my life. I'm mostly familiar with the concert band version, and this may or may not be the same one, but it might as well be. I feel like the clarinet had a different solo part in the version that I played, but I'm not positive. So anyhow, there you go. So that's some music. That is some music there, and it was really instrumental to me, as I said, in my this period of my life when I decided, hey, I'm a musician. This is something I want to do, even if I took detours through math and computer science. It was through pieces like this and my experience playing in high school band that I sort of decided, yes, this is what I want to be doing. I want to take this music seriously, and this piece, as well as lots of other things about that experience, just had a tremendous influence on me, made a tremendous impression on me. And so thank you, Wayne Miller, for introducing me to music and making everything, possible in my life since. So on that note, let's wrap things up a little bit here. So thanks everyone for being here. And yeah, we'll see if people have other pieces, that we want to take a look at next week. Over the next few weeks, we'll be just looking at miscellaneous different things. I really wanted to really want to talk about this piece and, have an excuse to talk about high school band and Wayne Miller. But yeah, we'll keep talking about other pieces of music over the next few weeks until we actually jump into that harmony course for real. So there you go. Next week will be more of the same. So hope to see you then, and have a great week. See you later.